Friends, good afternoon. We start our conference on the artificial intelligence digital transformation. As you know, yesterday, when addressing the General Federal Assembly,
То есть мы видим, что с самых высоких трибун тренды на внедрение искусственного интеллекта во всех ведущих базовых областях экономики страны заявляются во всеуслышание. Одновременно с этим с тех же высоких трибун неоднократно заявлялся курс на ориентирование на собственное российское производство ПО, на развитие изобретательства в России, на развитие креативных индустрий. Таким образом, мы видим, что искусственный интеллект рука об руку, если так можно сказать, находится на острие атаки вместе с интеллектуальной собственностью в передовых сферах не только на уровне государственной деятельности, но и в бизнес-сферах. И это особенно важно в период пандемии, когда жизнь буквально вынудила многие бизнесы, многие сферы государственной деятельности перестроиться на роботизацию, на автоматизацию каких-то рабочих процессов, возможно, где-то даже человек...
We apologize for some technical problems. The broadcasting will resume in a minute.
Внедряет технологии искусственного интеллекта в производство, в бытовую жизнь. Сегодня мы об этом будем говорить и с зарубежными спикерами. И, соответственно, профессиональное сообщество, юристов, в том числе правоведов, сталкивается с новыми вопросами.
Now we are facing new challenges and new questions. Where is the boundary between the creativity of a human being and artificial intelligence? How we prevent the destructive impact of the artificial intelligence on the human society? What the regulatory framework should look like? This is what we're going to discuss during the plenary session. Digital transformation, IP and AI trends. To start the discussion, I'll pass the floor to Head of Rospatent, Grigory Ivliev. Dear participants of the Third International Conference on Digital Transformation, it is very important that once again we pay attention to the most relevant questions of the development of intellectual property and digital technologies, both in Russia and abroad. We remember our very first international conference, which was dedicated to the blockchain technologies. The second conference highlighted the focus on the intellectual property as a means to reveal and identify the problems in the economy. Now, when we pay special attention to AI in the area of IP, it's clearly very important to take advantage of all the knowledge and excellence provided by the academics in Russia and abroad in order to study the process of digital transformation. For us, artificial intelligence is just another tool for experts, for the academics to impact IP. But AI is also the subject matter of patentability and a subject matter for research. And AI methods are defining the problems of examination, which is being done on the most complex and sophisticated issues. The items subject to patenting now are being created by means of AI, are being examined by means of AI, and certainly the lawyers, the economists, and patent attorneys have to define how AI actually has been patented in the digital environment. The conference of today will provide lots of answers. Not all the answers now leaked into the shape, but we have to choose the most efficient out of what is being provided. Rospatent goes on its digitalization of the agency. We are digitalizing our relations with the applicants in order to create convenient digital environment. All our communication to the applicants actually may go on online and digitally. This year, in November, December this year, we actually are going to introduce 11 ICT systems and the services which we offer. Not only they are digital, but they will be online. They are efficient. They will provide for broader access to our IT systems, to the Global Patent Fund, unlimited number of entrepreneurs and inventors. Within one environment, we're going to bring together the interests of manufacturers, entrepreneurs, inventors, scientists. We'll provide for access to our database for school students, undergraduates, and young scientists. This is when we are going to manage to master this huge fund. All the state-of-the-art technologies would be applicable in Russia. Everything which is going to be invented would be based on the top-notch inventions. And we see that the level of the inventions grew dramatically in order to comply with the modern progress. The patent agency should have the whole scope of the AI methods. Thank you so much. I wish every success to all of you. I'd like to thank Gazprom Bank for supporting our conference. Partnership with Gazprom Bank resulted in lots of events which we're holding aimed at digital transformation in the area of IP. This is another item and another step following which we're going to be more confident about the digital environment. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ivlev. I'm passing the floor to Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, Darren Tan. Apologize, Assistant Director General. That's Kenichiro Natsumi. Apologize to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Assistant Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization. With us from Geneva, Mr. Kenichiro Natsumi.
Thank you very much. Доброе утро.
Good morning, my name is Ken Natsume. I'm Assistant Director General of Infrastructure and Platform Department from the World Intellectual Property Organization.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation today. The Russian genius composer Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky completed his ballet Swan Lake today on April 22nd, back in 1876. I'm sure that this was composed by human, not by AI. But now, in 2021, many AI-composed music is available online. So it's pretty valid for us to talk about AI today. Allow me to touch upon a little bit wider scene of IP and frontier technologies, including AI, in our rapidly changing digital world. Our overarching policy objective is to ensure that innovators, creators, and policymakers are equipped to continue to give growth in this new world. We are experiencing an explosion and merging of technologies, including one, digital technologies such as Internet of Things, blockchain, of course, artificial intelligence, and big data. Secondly, physical technologies such as autonomous driving and 3D or even 4D printing. And thirdly, biological technologies such as genetic engineering and human augmentation. These frontier technologies are at the heart of the so-called the fourth industrial revolution. According to the World Economic Forum, by 2025, nearly a quarter of global GDP will come from digital technologies like AI and cloud computing. Innovation, creation, and IP go hand in hand. IP is central to driving growth in the field of frontier technologies. Our current IP system was developed with a human-centric focus and to encourage the development of technologies that enabled production process and trade of physical products. The system was also designed when the speed of innovation and creation was much slower than it is today. Then, how does the new digital world with increasing intangible assets fit into this system? And how do we ensure that we take advantage of the new technologies to improve our IP services? These questions are definitely at the heart of the AI debate as well. As the current IP systems are designed to incentivize human creation and innovation, how does AI fit into the current system? How do we balance the value of human and AI creation and innovation? WIPO has been a convener for discussion and committed to contribute to an IP ecosystem that fosters economic growth and supports innovative and creative stakeholders. Our work has several strands, such as raising awareness, adopting the WIPO services and assisting IP offices to take advantage of the new technologies, such as AI, providing practical tools, providing a forum for a balanced policy discussion. Today, I am delighted that we will continue the WIPO conversation as such a forum. We will announce dates and topics soon, so please stay tuned. We will be aiming at least one, possibly two sessions later this year. In parallel, WIPO is continuing to adopt new technologies, including AI, in its operations. The new technologies will allow us to cope with the increased complexity, volume of IP applications, and increasing need for collaboration between IP offices. WIPO's AI tools, such as WIPO Translate and WIPO Brand Image Search, are the actual working products. Today, I know there are a lot of exciting sessions coming in front of us soon later on, and I am pretty much confident that these sessions will be conducted by our wonderful moderators and played by fantastic panelists like beautiful music by Tchaikovsky. Большое спасибо. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Natsumi-sama. Even prior to the pandemic, I was lucky enough to visit MIRICAM, the Japanese Museum of Innovations. I attended the very first opera called Scary Beauty, written for a robot and artificial intelligence. Can you tell us, in the framework of the public awareness of the WIPO, do you run into some hallmark events of the same level, probably even from Russia?
尊敬的俄罗斯经济发展部奥克萨拉·塔拉先科副部长，俄罗斯联邦知识产权局格里高利·伊夫里耶夫局长和世界知识产权组织的同事，尊敬的各位产业界和学术界代表，各位来宾、女士们、先生们，大家早上好！很荣幸受俄罗斯联邦知识产权局的邀请，参与此次人工智能与知识产权国际会议。在此，我谨代表中国国家知识产权局向会议主办方表示衷心的感谢。今天会议的主题是知识产权与人工智能趋势。众所周知，以人工智能、物联网、机器人及云计算等技术为代表的第4次工业革命，正以前所未有的态势席卷全球。人工智能作为其中的核心驱动力，将进一步释放历次科技革命积蓄的巨大能量，深刻改变全球产业结构，影响人类未来的劳动方式、生活方式，甚至思维方式。世界主要国家将发展人工智能视为提升国家竞争力以及维护国家安全的重大战略，并加快出台相关规划和政策，促进人工智能及关联产业的快速健康发展。人工智能浪潮席卷全球各个产业的同时，也对知识产权制度带来了前所未有的机遇和挑战。为迎接人工智能时代的到来，现有的知识产权保护体系需要进一步拓展，对新技术应用带来的问题提供妥当的解决方案，才能切实保护新技术研发与应用产生的新型智力成果。目前，包括中国国家知识产权局在内的各国知识产权局和 WIPO 等世界主要知识产权机构都已经在做积极的探索。在人工智能技术应用方面， 智能检索和智能辅助审查等应用人工智能、大数据和云计算等技术的智能系统，已经在部分局上线使用，为审查员的日常工作提供帮助。在人工智能的知识产权保护方面，国家知识产权局修改了专利审查指南，并发布了指导案例。各局也在不断探索，逐步完善相关的法律法规和审查实践。我们认为，为了应对飞速发展的新技术对知识产权保护带来的持续性挑战，不仅需要知识产权局，也需要产业界和学术界的参与。各方共同努力，加强沟通交流，有助于汇集各方智慧，凝聚共识，为尽快解决这一问题提供新的思路。我相信，此次国际会议将为各方搭建一个高效的交流平台，使大家能够在务实层面探讨人工智能对知识产权保护带来的挑战以及如何应对。通过知识产权局、产业界和学术界这三方视角，了解技术和规则进展，交流问题和挑战，提出未来的工作方向和建议。我相信，在会议主办方的精心筹备下，在与会代表的共同努力下，此次会议必将增进交流，凝聚共识，取得丰硕成果。在此，我也预祝会议取得圆满成功。谢谢大家。
Friends, we are back to our live show, and I have a question to Mr. Natsume. Natsume-sama, prior to the pandemic, I was lucky to attend the very first concert written for the robot with orchestra. I know that in the framework of the public awareness and reach out of WIPO, I know that you're doing a lot in order to promote artificial intelligence. Do you know any other such world-level demonstration of artificial intelligence in the world or in Russia? Any such hallmark event that you can name?
Spasiba, thank you very much for the question. And yes, there are lots of events and activities are going on about AI all around the world, but I do not name specific activities in Russian Federation. However, I understand that the Rospatent is one of the most advanced IP offices in the world in this particular field, and Rospatent has been very enthusiastic about the issue of the AI. So in that sense, I commend the colleagues of the Rospatent very much. And in terms of the awareness raising in general, as I briefly mentioned in my opening remarks, we are thinking about continuation of the so-called conversation, WIPO conversation. Now we are looking at not only AI, but also a little bit wider space, including AI with frontier technologies. That has been done already 3 times, and all the sessions are open to everybody, not only to the government, but also all the stakeholders. And these have been available in 6 UN official languages, including the Russian language. So we would continue these activities, and of course that does include the simultaneous interpretation available in UN 6 official languages, including Russian. So I am very much looking forward to working with our colleagues from the Russian Federation, and we look forward to working with you together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So let's get back to Russia. And today we're going to speak about the challenges for artificial intelligence and the national strategy for the artificial intelligence till 2025. I'm passing the floor to Rustam Tikhonov, Director of the Department for Strategic Development and Innovations, Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. He will speak about certain vectors set by the federal project. Rustam, are you with us? Rustam? Good morning. What's new in the world of the artificial intelligence? Well, actually, everything evolves quite dynamically. We are getting prepared for the launch of the federal project. Some part of the measures have already been implemented starting from last year. We adopted a big plan on standardization. The government published a regulation on the launch of large-scale programs. One of the peculiar features of that program is that this is for the first time in my experience that we are supporting the taking technology as a new type of a project. Certainly, this is nothing new for the community, because the community is living in that paradigm. We evolve quite dynamically and will not jump the gun, but you may anticipate a number of other enactments and regulations, and very soon a whole range of the programs will be launched to complement the federal project. Tell me, please, will the state spearhead the efforts in the area of AI, or it would be secondary to the commercial developers? Well, just like in any technologies of applied nature, artificial intelligence certainly can be attributed to such technologies. The word technology is not realistic without application. And so the market would be spearheading these efforts, would play a leading role. The main developers of technological solutions, the main efforts would be applied by the corporations, followed by the state. The state has to create necessary conditions for the work of these technologies to provide for the balance of the public and business interests. And it should acquire some economic validity. Further on, there would be some gaps. Actually, it's become fashionable to measure everything following material scale from 0 to 9. And business is eager to invest into almost ready and mature technologies. The state has to do everything possible in order to close these gaps and to pinpoint the business. The federal budget allocated certain amount of money, and the state is not competing against the business. Is not keen to compete against Yandex, to use the generic name, to make some AI-based product. We pay a lot of attention to the R&D centers, such as academia and universities, but like the corporations become part of that. Therefore, we are supporting startups at the early stages, and we are supporting pilots. We realize that for our developers to accede to the market, they'd rather boast some success story. Everyone is afraid of being a pathbreaker. The state may catalyze the access to the market for the companies, thanks to co-funding of the first pilots. So these are the three areas which I have highlighted. There is a lot we can do in order to popularize the artificial intelligence, and we can create hackathons to engage the youth to the artificial intelligence. There might be other areas related to the pre-accelerators at schools. The federal project also applies all the efforts in order to somehow address the workforce and labor force shortage in the market. So we are focusing on more BA and MA programs in the area of artificial intelligence. We have to focus on that. In addition, we will actually eliminate the red tape and will introduce new legislation. Business and state are complementary structures. That would be the business which would be spearheading the technological efforts.
All right, very well, thank you. Now, I think we're going to discuss legal barriers today. I think that in most cases, law sometimes slow to catch up with the real life. This is why we face difficulties. Sometimes it takes additional legal regulation when the government federal program is implemented, right? Well, I think you haven't faced any problems. All right, let's move on. Rustam, thank you very much. Now the floor goes to Yuri Zubov, Deputy Head of Rospatent. We're going to discuss initiatives of Rospatent at the international level, right? And your initiatives with respect to improving the legal regulations in Russia and worldwide. Yes, thank you. Rospatent, as we already discussed together with our colleagues from WIPO, said that, as so did Mr. Ivlev. So starting from 2015, we have been actively involved in using this technology, the AI technology. And clearly, in the beginning, we were implementing these technologies for ourselves to make our lives easier and to make some operations more routine, so like working with simple AI. But over time, as the technology was developing, as our understanding of the situation, of the current situation was developing, and the government started to focus more on man, on the citizens, on their requirements, of the business sector. We started implementing these tools, we started developing them to simplify cooperation with our agency, to make it easier, make it quicker. In the online mode. So what I would like to point out in this respect, I'm not going to go too deep into the technology, but I prepared a brief presentation, and I'm ready to point out a number of implementations in this respect. Now, first of all, we offer expert assessments of patents. We do research in the national data sets, about 160 million units of patent information we already have in our libraries. We did that manually. We sometimes do this manually even now, but to simplify the task, to cope with the inflow of applications which are technically complicated, we have developed this search, the search for similarities, which whenever a formula is entered in the system, whenever a utility model or description is entered in this system, we can do a search in this whole global massive data massive. We can identify the closest, the most relevant solutions, which are most close to the inventions which is being filed. We have received a result of about 60% of replies. When the system returns the result, our task is to get up to 80%, and I'm convinced that we will be able to cope with this task in the coming years. But 60% for all citizens and companies will be launched by the end of this year, owing to the launch of this search platform. It is absolutely free. It's a professional tool, and it gives us an opportunity to test ourselves, to test whether our solution is in line with the global level. If we're in the same trend as the whole world is. We can do it end-to-end from the time where an idea just occurs to your mind and all the way to the time where it's time to start protecting the intellectual property related to your idea. The next point I would like to make is that it's one of the most dynamically developing assets of IP. Individualization, trademarks, for instance. Here it is important to note the fact that whenever a strategy for the development of a particular business, particular brand is chosen, it is important not to start working in an area where other companies have already been working. So it is very important to identify your own means of individualization and to identify their uniqueness, to find out whether they are unique. At the moment, our experts carry out most such operations manually. They have done so for years and years. In order to understand whether a particular brand or statement is new, they have had to work manually. Many companies had to apply to experts and large requests for such searches, but it costs money, it costs time, and there was no professional tool in the market in the serious sense of this word. So we have developed this tool. We have been testing from the beginning of this year. So far, internally, this tool has helped us to change the technology of our service, to transform all our processes. And by the end of this year, after it has been refined, we will be able to present this tool to everybody to use it free of charge. So any businessman, anybody who has an idea to develop their business, to test what they have invented, the name of the company, the identification of the company, some graphic images. You could download it into the system, you can test your image and see whether there are any conflicts. If there are such companies, or there are companies which are similar, close in your business area, or which are offering similar products or services, if there are any competitors, not in the commercial sense of this word, but in terms of symbols, signs and icons, in terms of developing your own brand. So these are the technologies. Technologies for image search will be available to everybody in a free mode. So you're welcome to use it. It will be a very important, innovative step. And this slide shows how a neural network functions. I don't think we need to delve into it right now, but please believe me, it does work, and you will be able to test it for yourselves in the near future. Another area which I would like to point out is processing 3D images, working with 3D technologies. It's no secret that engineering today is in CAD systems. We use 3D technologies to do designs. So even accepting applications with 3D models was already a big step forward in this respect. And it is not just hollow words. It is not just to tell that we're open to business and to new technologies. No, I mean more. When I'm developing a system which will be able to compare these images with the library of images worldwide, to ensure a high-quality expert assessment rather than manual assessment using paper catalogs, so 2D catalogs. So AI will now help us to do a multifaceted comparison and examination of the application of the IP assets in the application against the existing IP assets, such as utility models, designs, any asset of IP, together with the 3D files attached, will be examined by the AI. And on the basis of the pre-search, the human brain will make the final decision. We are convinced that these are breakthrough technologies. They will help to accelerate the process of registration of IP assets, absolutely any IP assets. And this is a breakthrough in terms of development and further development of additive technologies such as 3D printing. because IP assets registered together with 3D files can be licensed, and you can dispose of this right, and you can transfer it later on to create concrete industrial solutions and to launch them in mass production. So this technology is also available for applications, and comparison as part of digital technology and as part of the digital technology projects we're implementing as part of the federal project for the IP, for the AI will be ready, and what will be made available for open access, for free access to anybody, to the private sector, to the public sector, to researchers, to scientists, to anybody. Furthermore, I would like to say that we have a federal project which includes a number of initiatives related to machine translation and strengthening the functionality of the searches to be able to offer a better quality returns of such search. And one of the areas of our work is joint work with the Ministry of Science, Education of the Russian Federation to share information about patents. We, for our part, are going to strengthen the system of the intellectual system with the results of our R&D institutions to ensure quality and to improve the results of the government, of the solutions offered by government R&D institutions, because they will be based on the existing patents or patent families. They will understand whether particular research has already been undertaken. And we, for our part, will be receiving information from new research areas. We will be able to offer a better quality expert assessment of existing and future patents. Now, with your permission, I would like to take a couple of minutes to talk about regulatory issues which you mentioned at the beginning. They are also of high importance to us. We need to do a lot jointly, both at WIPO, and we need to improve Russian laws and regulations. The concept for regulation of regulations in the area of AI robotics was launched a short time ago. Now we're undertaking consultations aimed to understand how we can ensure registration of AI assets created by AI. How can we ensure registration of rights to the AI proper, to the IP asset created as part of the AI operation? And I can tell you that at the moment we haven't made any major progress yet with respect to patenting in Russia. Over the 5 years from 2015, we have done research starting from 2016, and we saw that about 30 patents for AI have been issued in Russia. Clearly, these numbers differ by an order of several magnitudes worldwide. We need to work with the private sector in this respect, with inventors. Maybe we need to offer them a fast-track approach, maybe individual approach. We need to tell them how to patent such solutions, how to learn from our Western partners. And I'm convinced that very soon we will come to a certain consensus with them. But such inventions must be patented, and we do have all the technical capabilities in this respect. We need to undertake certain organizational steps, offer consultations. We need to teach our inventors to prepare applications properly and to file them using our systems, the AI systems, file them to Rospatent to be patented. Yes, Yuri, thank you very much. I, as a practicing lawyer and as a manager of media projects, I'm very glad to hear that image search will be automated, because this will help us to accelerate. Now, I'm curious to know, now if search technologies are accelerating, will the registration proper be accelerated? Well, I can tell you that you'll be surprised, but at the moment, the content search, which takes years and years in some countries, takes not more than 4 months on average in Russia. But still, there's room for improvement. Why we're discussing that we need to develop technologies of machine translation? Because there's a certain block, if I may, for the lack of a better word. To do a good quality search, you need to have the latest information patterns. Worldwide, this information is gathered at quite a high level by Rospatent, by other services. For instance, WIPO still takes some time to form the full set of documents for the last year. But the thing is that to do this search, you need to have documents translated from Chinese, from Korean, from Japanese into English, and then to upload it into the database, because not all experts, and they're all talented people, highly educated people, but they cannot speak all the languages of the world, because we have several patterns in the Mongolian language, for instance. So this presents certain difficulties. So to be able to overcome this language barrier, and to be able to gather information from all the countries, to be able to confirm the quality and the novelty of the pattern, all the documents must be gathered and translated very quickly. All the patterns, all the summaries, the contents must be translated and uploaded into the database. Now, it takes about 4 months to get this information worldwide. If we develop these technologies and we're working on these machine translation technologies, then this time can be reduced to very low figures. Yes, the private sector will definitely say thank you. And we hope that the private sector will help us. You know, I'm sitting here listening to you when I discuss pattern search on Yandex. There's a special tab on Yandex for pattern search. We have special search for images. We've had this AMT technology for many years. Come to us, use it. Yes, you know, we even invented this search several years together with you. So, please, you're welcome to come to us. Oh, yes, we will, thank you. Yeah. All right. This brings me to Alexander Krajnov, Director for Development Technologies of AI at Yandex. Yes, I would like to tell you a story about how IP in the area of development and knowledge fares in the real world, the world of developers. We call it machine learning internally, and in the bigger world it is referred to with the term AI. So, in any area, there's research, there's the industry. These are two different pieces. A scientist and inventor invents something, and then sooner or later, this reaches the implementation phase. Now, in our area, these are the areas which are very close to one another. They even overlap, because what is the result of research in our area, a result which is applied? It's a formula. It's just a mathematical formula. So all the way from its invention to its application can be quite short. I'm not convinced that it is a record, but from what I know, the best result was 3 days from the publication of the scientific article to the implementation in production. It was a very, very quick path. How does science look in our area? It looks something like this. This is a picture from a research conference where mainly young blokes have been promoting science, and it is mainly populated by young guys at the moment. I think that you reach the peak of your shape at about 28 years of age. If you look at the list of authors who have done most publications, I think this is about the age group. And such conferences offer thousands of reports, tens of thousands of participants, and they're very difficult to attend. It's very difficult to be selected for such a conference. Only the best of the best are selected. There's a special selection system. How do these things work? I'll give an example. Let's say there was this excellent article some time ago, which told about changing stars. An absolutely scientific research. It is absolutely inapplicable in real life, because it takes have too much time to praise the images. Then a next article appeared. It was prepared together by Skoltek and Yandex, and it was covering how to do the same and get better results, but only in a matter of milliseconds. A fast forward. And they not only published formulas, they also published the open code. Here, come and use it. And people came and took this open code, did the same. There appeared this Prisma startup. The company grew to billions of rubles. So they took this code, they started using it, and then a wave of indignation appeared. Look, guys, they took your IP, you, Yandex. Why aren't you outraged? Well, we're only happy because the only thing that makes us sad that we had to be in their place. Right. But all the participants in this chain, all the researchers that have been developing all this algorithm were absolutely happy because their ideas were used in real life. Now, the picture looks more or less like this. There's an overall melting pot of ideas, trends, thoughts, knowledge, and everybody makes their contribution, particularly big business. Because if you look at the main contributors, if you look at who publishes most, it's the top companies. They have been publishing most publications. They have been uploading this to open source, all sorts of data sets, etc. Furthermore, leading global labs, leading universities, maybe individual researchers. It can even be some startups or individual inventors who have been writing some source code. And all this available to the rest of the world. It's been uploaded in an absolutely open form. Come and use it. And people do come and do use. And again, new publications, new researches is all based on the information from this pot. Maybe not directly. Maybe you need to add something. Maybe you need to add your knowledge, your efforts, because not always a spherical research is applicable in real life. But still, I showed you these examples with transferring styles and images. Maybe it doesn't look serious. Let's look at a more serious example. Now, it's about our unmanned air vehicles, UAVs. Please press the video button. Not always is AI still used to press the button. Colleagues, could you please press the button? No, not yet. Okay, let's move on. And we can get back to the drones. I want you to show an excellent video. Colleagues, will we see the video? Just bring the cursor to the right button and press it. No, not yet. All right. Or maybe not that yet. Okay. Whatever. So, drones, the drone technology is also based exclusively on articles, publications, data sets, which are available freely. There are lots of pre-trained data sets. There are articles on how to do these data sets, on how to prepare this synthetic data for training. There are various challenges between data sets as to what data sets predict situation better. And this screen shows our publication that we did at Yandex. Our guys that do unmanned vehicles, they not only make these vehicles, they also share the results of their intellectual activity. As a result, we see that all the data accumulated belong to the whole world. It is very difficult to say, this is my idea. No, it is available to everybody, open to everybody, and known by everybody. If something is not available, something not known, then it's highly likely that nobody really needs it. Still, that said, clearly inventions belong to inventors. Clearly, any invention has an author, and let's respect the author, let's laud the author, we remember this person, and scientists do watch this very closely. Whenever a publication publication is made, there are lots of links to previous publications, previous authors. People do this, but this is an industry standard. Now, products belong to the developers, no matter whose initial idea was. The person who did the final product, the person who has implemented this in a way which is usable, in a way which people like, this is the right person. This is the guy who's done the great job. Alexander, with their permission, initially I am a lawyer. My clients come to me to protect their IP. The way you scientists share your IP results, it's excellent. Right, that's exactly what I want to discuss. What do we need patents for? Because you may ask that, you obtain patents. Oh yes, we do. Companies worldwide, even companies that operate in the area of AI, they receive patents in the area related to AI. What is the reason? You know, it is similar to nuclear weapons. It is not really a weapon you need to attack, but it is just a deterrent. It is something which makes other people understand they shouldn't be better attacked. So whenever you have a patent, it's like this. Patents cover everything at a very high density level. You cannot make a step without stepping on somebody's patent. As a result, we see a situation where patents are accumulated not to prevent somebody from doing something, but rather from preventing other people coming to you asking, what are you doing over there? So, clearly, now then we see patents who can be termed as patent trolls, or who are quite aggressive, who are making the lives of other market participants worse, or making other people stop doing something. Interestingly, quite often we see cases when a big company buys up this patent troll and stops their operation, because clearly a big company wouldn't do anything like that. Well, I can tell you the following. If we attack somebody, sometimes ever find out that somebody has been violating our patents using the technology that we have patented, well, good for you. You're welcome to use it. It is just another proof that we have done a very good technology. We receive our patents not to prevent somebody from doing something, but rather as a means of protecting. Great. And technologies have been developing so quickly at such a great pace that even if you patent something today, if you're using something today, in a year's time, it will not be a decisive factor anymore. So, new technologies developed very quickly. Now, as we have been discussing this, how technology has developed, and we can watch the video now. Great. It's a great video. Yes. Image of the future, right? No, it's images of the past because it made a year ago. Oh, that reminds me that a week ago we were walking the streets of Moscow with my niece from Germany. And we saw this Yandex delivery robot, and my niece was following it, filming it, so that when she comes back to Germany, she would show her German friends what is happening in this remote Russia, full of forests and bears. Yes, that is why we're not just happy to take something which is which has been invented worldwide. We cannot adopt it in Russia because their systems cannot recognize bears, and they're not used to Americans, to Russians now. Let's invite here our American colleague, from Steve Krahn from Microsoft. Microsoft is one of the world's leaders in patenting solutions based on AI. The first link shows that Microsoft has already more than 18,000 patents only in this area. And it's about 1 a.m. in Seattle right now, so we hope that Steve will be able to join us right now.
I think that some technical things are being tackled right now. We're going to get connected to Seattle. Certainly, we're very much interested in how AP strategies of companies changed over the year of the pandemic. And the working from home probably resulted in the fact that these companies could hire people from other countries. Steve Crown, Mr. Crown? Good afternoon.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Thank you so much for joining us on such a late hour.
Right, well, thank you. And I don't know whether you can see my screen. Are you able to see the slides?
Not yet. At the moment, we see you and your immense library.
Well, thank you. Well, it'll be more interesting if I can share my screen. No luck?
Not yet. Not yet. We are looking forward to see your
It
presentation.
may be that it's simply not going to work.
We're going to launch your presentation
I did
from
send
Moscow.
my slides if you can put them up.
Well, that's great. Let's give it a try. Can we show the presentation from Moscow?
You should have it in case they can do that. But I'm attempting to share my screen and I'm not having any success on Zoom.
While our slides are being prepared, so let's start our conversation, let's start our talk.
All right, why don't we go ahead and do that then? So the title of my presentation, and I'll try to keep it to 10 to 12 minutes, is really about artificial intelligence and big data, the idea of data sets, and the emerging intellectual property responses. So if my slides were there, I would note that we're talking about narrow AI, that is very specific questions. It's not general AI. And what machine learning provides us in this scenario is identification of patterns, trends, correlations, probabilities. And in every instance, having more data improves performance of the machine, including improves confidence. Now, not all data are equal. There are privacy concerns, commercial secrets. There can be national security interests. But very often we do find that we can share more and achieve more if we have the right intellectual property protections to encourage that. And some of the areas where this is happening and has been for years are the environment, medical research in the last year, commercial activities, educational opportunities for young people. All of these are places where sharing data is not to anyone's harm, it's only to our shared benefit. So one of the challenges we have is all of this data resides in separate silos. Might be in a company, it might be in a particular government, it might be in an agency inside a government. And yet, how can we share this in a trusted way? Yep. So my key point is that increasingly every enterprise is or should be a data company. But today every enterprise is a data company. And I'm going to illustrate that by talking about cows, what you find on farms. Cows, so korowy, And if you had the slide, it would be a little more interesting to follow. But it turns out that for thousands of years, we have dealt with animals. And one of the biggest challenges for farmers is how to maintain and manage animal reproduction. So with a cow, it turns out that a cow is able to be impregnated about once every 21 days, but only for a 12-hour period. And this normally happens between 10 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning. So one of the questions you'll find with big data, one of the things that's important is to ask the right question. Some farmers in Japan asked the question, could they learn more about how to predict when exactly a cow is ready for insemination? And it turned out by using a device that was strapped to the leg of the cow, like a Fitbit. And I have on my slides graphs that show this. What it turns out happens is right before a cow is ready to be impregnated, there's a radical jump in the number of steps it takes for several hours before the best time for the cow to become pregnant. They did further research and found that they could identify when it was most likely that once that period had begun, how you could have significantly more female or male offspring. If you wanted more milk cows, there was a particular time measuring how the cow was stepping when it would be best to inseminate the cow. There's further work that then went and looked at chewing of the cud, so how a cow has its second stomach. It turns out if you measure when it is very active and when it becomes unusually inactive in its use of the cud, that is highly correlated in a big data way with when the cow is ready to be impregnated. And the two are actually inverse. More steps and less chewing of the cud are confirmations that now is the time a cow should be approached. What's amazing about this to me is for thousands of years across the entire planet, we've raised cows and horses, and it's only with big data by actually measuring these seemingly unimportant data points that we start learning new opportunities. Let me then go on to say that if automated measurements like the steps per hour or cud chewing can bring forth correlations that help us significantly improve even farming, imagine what it can do whether you're in finance or other businesses. But there are three primary challenges with sharing of data when we look at classic intellectual property protection. And that, of course, we've relied on patents, copyrights, and trade secrets. I'll start with patents. And there, of course, there are very specific requirements one must have, and data sets don't generally work well. Patents are still very important in the cloud business environment, but not so much for data sets. Indeed, patent offices are issuing more and more artificial intelligence related inventions, but their role is primarily, as was noted by the previous speaker, in part defensive, and it also has a role in demonstrating to would-be investors that there is real innovation inside the company demonstrated by patents. I'll turn then quickly to copyright. And there the challenge is, of course, copyright is about the individual creativity of a person. It's not about facts and discoveries or things that are of that sort, principles. And so we know even under the WIPO copyright treaty, under the Berne Convention, copyright is about expressions, but not ideas or procedures or methods. And while it works to protect the presentation of data in the cloud, it's, again, not fitted well to doing everything we want with data sets. And we have further challenges with the notion of transformative uses. Many countries are now coming to see that when a machine is fed a data set, it's not a copyright violation in the same way that somebody reading data is not a reading a story is not a reproduction, which is what copyright addresses. So this idea of analyzing component parts is not being equated with public display or performance or making derivative works. It's rather a use, and use is not really one of the protected rights in copyright. We then have also happening, and you see this especially in Europe, there are specific carve-outs, specific exceptions now saying, even if a data set could be copyrighted, because there are means in Europe to copyright it, there's an exception for text and data mining, that is taking the data to use it for machine learning. And this is in Articles 3 and 4 of the European DSM Copyright Directive. And finally, of course, we've had trade secrets, but secrecy is not really what we're seeking with sharing of data. What I do want to offer up, though, is there's another thing that we've always had and now is becoming increasingly valuable in the cloud environment, and that is pure contract law. The idea of negotiating for particular uses and only those uses with rights to claim breach of contract and damages in the event that somebody is infringing on the limited use you intended to provide somebody for use of your data set. And we're finding that this is being used increasingly. Microsoft has a number of initiatives out there you'll find on the web. These are data collaboration initiatives. If you just search Microsoft data collaboration on any search engine, you'll come across these. And what we've announced are a number of principles. The notion is to build upon the success of the open source software revolution and actually find ways to make data more openly available, but in controlled, trusted ways. Now, sometimes data has privacy concerns. It might have significant commercial value. And in that case, contracting can be supported and enhanced with technical innovations. So we're seeing that people are using technologies like differential privacy, data brokers who are third parties who have access to the data and then control very carefully how people can access and use it. Beyond that, we can get into much more sophisticated cryptography and data bricks and use of containers. But all of these are means of taking a contract and filling in the spaces between what has historically been provided by our classic IP portfolios. One of the benefits, of course, of using law is you don't have to spell out everything that the law provides. And if you do a new contract, you might find it becomes very lengthy, very expensive to negotiate. So Microsoft and others, again, you can find out on the web, we have a data use agreement for open AI model development. You'll find these things out on any internet search. And in these, what we have are draft agreements for data sharing with annotations to suggest how best to use it in particular scenarios, because we do believe that we're in an age where everyone is going to look at how to use data more effectively, even in ways we never previously imagined. And every entity that has Internet of Things and online services where they're collecting data has potentially valuable learning that can be unlocked if we find the right way to do that in a trusted, shared way. So my key point, and I'll stop here, is that traditional IP tools, of course, remain very important in the cloud era, but as our reach expands into the cloud and into these virtual scenarios, we believe that the legal protections need to break free from our traditional bounds as well. I'll stop there, and I hope there are some questions later. Thank you.
Mr. Crown, большое спасибо.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crown. Do you understand you correctly? The data use agreement for open AI model development is an open agreement, and it applies to any market, not just companies that entered into this agreement. Is that right?
So, well, you could structure as to who you would want to be the parties to an agreement. So there are some scenarios in which people will want to contribute it to a commons, as it were, but there are others where you want to have for example, only medical researchers with certain constraints have access to particular data.
Понятно. Вы состоите в каких-то подобных?
But again, very fully customizable depending upon the business and technical scenario to be addressed.
All right.
Большое спасибо.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you very much to finding time for us at this very late hour. Your experience is very valuable.
I may leave in a few minutes in that I do have meetings in my morning. It's now after 1 o'clock my time.
Да, большое спасибо. К сожалению, мне придется вскоре из этой сессии выйти, потому что у меня с утра очень важное мероприятие. Сейчас у нас уже второй час ночи.
Благодарим вас. Всего доброго.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. Thank you. Thank you. Да.
Отлично.
Great, thank you. So, let's move on.
Ну, в общем, не секрет, что
It is no secret, dear colleagues, that Sberbank is the center of competence in the area of AI.
нам необходимо
And we simply cannot help looking at in this direction, because the main steps in AI development will affect both the country and companies using these technologies in their businesses. So we have Vladimir Avribach, Managing Director and Head of Data Research Center for Government at Sberbank. Vladimir, hello.
Владимир, как слышно?
Yes, good morning, colleagues. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you well. What are the main outlines for work in this area, AI and IP? Right. I would like to tell you about our latest developments. Can you see my presentation?
Видно ли презентацию в плеере?
Can we see the presentation on the screens, colleagues?
Да, нам показывают, что презентация.
Right. The moderators are telling us that everybody can see the presentation. All right. Thank you. Then I will get started. So, dear colleagues, I would like to tell you about two main aspects. Firstly, how AI has been developing in Russia, about where we are, where we began. I'll give a very brief overview to be on the same page. And then I would like to touch upon the issue of influence of AI and relations between AI and the results of intellectual activities. Artificial intelligence, those who were involved in drafting the national strategy, Alexander Khanov, for instance, and Rustam Tikhonov, they should remember how much time it took us to come up with a definition of AI. And while it is already 2 years old, I would like to quote it again. There are two main functions that we will need to discuss intellectual property. And these are imitation of human's cognitive function, and it includes self-learning, looking for solutions without a predetermined algorithm. So these are the two aspects that, for lack of a better word, we agreed upon. These will differ AI from other algorithms. And there are 5 areas which we all know very well, which include AI. Well, we think basically that it is critically important to understand that today AI penetrates all the spheres of human life, like electricity did 100 years ago, starting from heavy industry and agriculture, all the way to government and education. Artificial intelligence, as Steve has quite correctly said, helps us to solve individual narrow tasks. It helps us to do sometimes instead of human, like selecting particular advertising, but quite often we see AI help to do something together with the human. And if we look at the latest success stories that we can read about, then what we see is a sequence of interesting facts. And we could talk about success stories for days on end, success stories from various sectors. And clearly we cannot ignore such things as the appearance of GPT-3. It is basically a model of artificial intelligence that has been trained on 170 billion parameters. We receive a certain text, and it can generate a text which would look very much like human-generated text. Well, clearly text generation in this case would be based on all the texts available on the internet in various languages. But just think what will happen when all the patent models, all the results of intellectual activities will be available, and when a model is created that will generate intellectual activity results trained on trillions of parameters. Because on the one hand, we see an algorithm race. It may be in the good sense of this word. It may be the field where people can now stand out, where researchers can stand out. But on the other hand, we see equipment race, if I may, and he who has the capacity to the machines that are capable of training algorithms based on billions, trillions, dozens of trillions of parameters, he will be getting leadership in this race, which is open so far. But let's see how it develops in the future. Now, overall, as AI development in Russia is concerned, we know that a special national strategy was adopted for development of artificial intelligence, and a federal project was approved. Our colleagues from Rospatent are also involved in this project as the government agency in charge of doing research, as we discussed in the beginning of this session, research of similar results of intellectual activities. And basically, this federal project has special tasks for supporting research, for providing research in the area of software and equipment, and for offering good quality for availability. Initiatives with the heads of the Digital Transformation Department have been undertaken to prepare open data sets so that this data, anonymized wherever this relates to personal data and without any commercial serious, would be made available to a broad range of developers. And clearly, all these issues, whenever something new is generated, when we see the results of intellectual activities, they call for discussions of how to treat these latest trends. And it is important to mention in this respect that all the federal authorities in Russia have been now working very closely so as to be able to launch the digitalization on one hand and to prepare these data sets on the other hand. We have already seen a pilot way of this digitalization. Vladimir, can we look at it from the legal point of view? Vladimir, may I interrupt you? So, here we proceed from the following. We proceed from the following outlines that were raised in the national strategy and overall in the discussions that took place last December. It was said that AI will influence everybody. Now, And if we come close to the topic of influence of AI on the results of intellectual activities, I would like to point out two major aspects in the national strategy. On the one hand, we would like to increase the number of results of intellectual activities. Clearly, there are patents, there are articles. Articles are published, and we see software, which is also a part of intellectual property activities. On the other hand, we want to see more intellectual activity results in the area of applied solutions, which are used in our everyday life. Now, these parameters were provided for in the federal project. They are not on the KPI list, but they are monitored and they will be measured every year. On the other hand, we have this document called the Concept for the Development and the Regulation in the area of artificial intelligence. This is why it is. This is why a number of issues have been raised, and the most important issue, in my opinion, is who should become the person who has exclusive rights to the results of intellectual activity. I will demonstrate you that last year in the IAJ conference, it was last December, we launched these K-Labs together with the popular singers and performers. So all the images were generated basically by neural networks. And this helped us to create new works of art. And we see that we can now make absolutely unusual art objects. I will not show them right here. But to conclude, I would like to mention that the questions that we're going to discuss in the coming years, the question that we will have to answer in the coming years as to who owns the right, is it possible to patent the results of intellectual activities, intellectual property generated by AI, what regards protectability and the results, and whether AI can be considered the subject in the legal point of view. So this brings me to the legal aspect. We see AI has been growing at a very high pace. This calls for a special reaction, special response from lawyers. We even need to predict possible future collisions, possible future conflicts with respect to AI. So we have with us Mikhail Yakushev, Deputy Director of the Digital Institute of the Higher School of Economics. Mikhail, what challenges do lawyers see in the intellectual property area, both old experts and new specialists? And what can we say? Yes, thank you. Our institute was established last year. It's the Digital Law Institute. We have already carried out a whole set of research. And among other things, we focused on intellectual property and artificial intelligence. And in our research, we, to a great extent, considered not something what is happening right now or what will happen tomorrow, but rather what we can expect day after tomorrow. So this future is coming, but still it is the future of our regulation. Among other things, we looked at what is happening in the sphere of regulation of IP in view of the AI. So I will touch upon the problems and challenges. They are reduced to a number of very interesting aspects. Firstly, the division between the intellectual property created by AI itself or created using AI. This is what we call machine creation. And then it's also AI, which can be considered a tool for an individual to use. Legal problems which arise in this respect are, first of all, can AI be considered as subject of legal activities? I was glad to hear that Rospat has already been registering IP activities, IP assets created by AI. Not quite so, yes, because I was quite surprised, because we don't have an electronic person in the Russian law yet, but I think we're coming closer. Then, can such assets be protected at all? Because, as Yandex mentioned in a number of cases, they're not interested in this protection. They would rather see these assets be distributed. 3 is the owner of IP rights. And last but not least, maybe it is not so important to our colleague from the US or from the UK, but it's the purpose of IP protection. And this brings a number of related issues. For instance, what is AI in the legal sense? For instance, my colleague from the Sberbank said, imitation of intellectual activity. Well, this is clear, but this does not quite fit in legal acts or regulations. So we need to understand very clearly here what we mean by AI in the legal sense of this word. And last but not least, what are the purposes of this regulation? What is the purpose of regulating anything? And do we need to do anything at all? Do we encourage creation of new technologies? Do we do our best to prevent monopolization, abuse of rights? Do we ensure the stability of life with respect to IP assets? So these are the questions that regulators and legislators must answer. Now, very briefly about the main problem. If an IP asset is created using AI as a tool, we don't see any problem at all, because common law applies. But if this has been created only by AI, and this is highly relevant with respect to patents law, then various options are possible. Furthermore, so the owner of the AI system can own the right, which can result in monopolization. Lots of companies will monopolize the rights to all the derivatives of such work. Secondly, the organizer of this AI can own the rights, who is not necessarily the owner of this information system. Option 3, AI will own the rights. And this, again, brings us to the idea that, to understanding that there's no such person yet. But from a legal point of view, any legal entity is also a fictitious person. So it is no problem saying that AI, from the point of view of theory of law, is fictitious too. And last but not least, any work created by AI will not generate any right at all, and it will become public domain right away without any need for protection. There are also aspects related to patent relations, to using the data of machine learning, using of the related rights concept, and these are the conclusions which I think are the most important conclusions that we can use today. So, firstly, we need to include the right of reproduction and processing of the database only for the purpose of automated analysis or machine learning in order to develop AI. This has to be included on the list of allowed steps. This will serve to avoid conflicts. By analogy with related rights, we need to provide the organizer of AI creation a right for a term which is limited more than the term of copyright. And last but not least, Article 1357 of the Civil Code should give a better definition that the right to patent can belong to the person who organized the creation of this AI work without any limitation with respect to the term of this right.
Such propositions, once being implemented, first of all, will allow us to generate more practice, more experience of how to address certain legal issues, and will help us to move forward. Thank you so much, Yuri. As a representative of Frostbite, and do you support this progress in the legal mind? Well, I'd like to comment on what's been said just to avoid the misunderstanding. 830 patents which were issued, these are not the patents for the AI solutions, but these are the patents for the work with AI, patents for algorithms and other things. But as for the legal things and legal issues, I think that we have to take a concerted approach. The international community also is not ready to address the problem of the legal capacity of the artificial intelligence in Russia. We used to be path breakers, then why not? The legal issues actually will be considered further on in the framework of that conference. Well, I hope that we'll find some approaches and some definitions for that. Thank you so much. Friends, this session is over. Stay tuned. With us were Mikhail Yakushev, Yuri Zubov, Alexander Krainov, and me, Timothy Sherbakov from RBC. Thank you.